hear it?
Yep, I sure can.
All right. Australian property titles, the different titles from strata title, community title, company title, all the different titles. We're going to cover it very quickly right now.
Well,
Yes.
very good morning.
How are you, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. How are you? How are we all?
How's everyone out there today? It's another beautiful day, I think.
It is gloomy, but we're getting there. The sun's trying to peer through, that's for sure.
Hope so. Xanth, you did some research last night to help peeps out there about
Titles. So never in the world did I imagine or even know that there are so many different titles that you can hold for your parcel of land. Everything from native title, like you touched on before, community title, Torrens title, strata title, and there are others that have just escaped my mind at the moment. But I feel like my brain is on title overload. Just what titles are out there? What are the impacts that they have on your land? You doing developments on the selling of your land, or even will they impact you purchasing a parcel of land? Mark, let's talk this through in more detail.
And you know what? Doesn't matter. Like if you're a tenant of a property, if you're an occupant owner of a property, do the different titles actually matter? When you're lending money, does it matter? How much money you can borrow, does it matter? Livability. It's really, really interesting when you learn about them. But if we speed through these ones this morning, Torrens title, it's the best. So, what did you learn about that?
Well, I've learned that that's generally what you would have on a piece of land, more likely a house, and you have claimed that land. You can do whatever you want to that parcel of land. You own the land, the house, what's above that house in the airspace, and below to a certain extent as well, all of the soil as well. So Torrens title, it's a registry of the land, you own it, and it's an easy form of developing and building on that particular parcel of land. Am I right?
And yeah, spot on. It's the highest form of property title. That's for banks love Torrens title. With Torrens title, you're generally not sharing anything. It's yours. And that's why they extended across to strata title, because there was things that you share with people, you have in common parts of the land. So they invented strata, which we'll talk about in a sec. But
Yep.
Torrens title is the high. So basically, every house when you're driving down the street that you see is a Torrens title home. That's the one title that you will get when you buy a property. The banks love it. They will lend nicely on Torrens title, and you don't have to worry about neighbours. Now, with Torrens title, you can have a boundary in common with another Torrens title property. You can, in some circumstances, build up to that boundary. So even though the properties are touching, you may think they're townhouses and they're strata, but they're not. They're Torrens title.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, because I know that yesterday when we were looking at a property for the very first time in my life, which is why I started reading up on this stuff, there was something called a community title, which when reading up about more of that, it's much like a strata in the way of a community owns certain accesses and parts of that land. However, it's more for the development of townhouses. So you still have your house, but then you've got community areas such as a driveway or community gardens that you would all, I don't know, kind of have a claim to or have a say in.
Yep. So I guess with where the community title comes in, yeah, you're right. Quite simply, it is like you do have your house, and it is your house, but you've got a driveway that's not a government driveway. Like, I guess, to put it very simply, and if anyone's got, we are not the experts on this by no means. We're just sharing what we do know from our experience. And if everyone's got input in this, throw it in. We'd love to know. But the community title seems to be one where, yes, you got your Torrens title house, but we don't have a government road that we're spilling onto. We're having a road that all the neighbours and you will own.
So much like an estate in a way, would you say? It's kind of like a community estate.
Yep, spot on. And then everyone chips in for the lights on the road, the ceiling of the road, the gardening on the side of the road, lawn mowing and landscaping and stuff like that. So it only costs sometimes only $1,000 a year or $1,500 a year. It's quite low to run, but yeah.
And so if I had a community title, so I've got a house in a community title, would I have to pay, if I was thinking of selling as an example, a pest and building for my home in addition to some kind of strata fee for the community title aspect of that?
Yep, because that's going to have to. It's not looked after by your petrol taxes and your roads and your council rates. It's specifically owned by the people in that estate.
And I suppose to me it's very interesting because I've never encountered a community title before up until yesterday. So it's brand new to me. And like I mentioned before, when reading about all of these titles, I do kind of feel like my brain is on information overload. Never did I ever realize there are so many different titles that one person can hold on their lot of land.
And you know what, livability wise, I guess, if again, you know, unless you're actually buying or unless you're actually lending on it, you sort of wouldn't really dig up this stuff. Or if you're going to go visit a friend that's in a strata title or a Torrens title house, you sort of wouldn't know the difference. It's a lot of it's in that setup where you learn about this sort of stuff. Okay, so Torrens title we covered, community title we've covered.
Yeah. Strata
next one you want to cover?
What about strata title?
Okay.
We've got a lot of that around the Northern Beaches, in particular apartment buildings, any kind of units, all of those complexes, especially here in DY where it is so high density. I'm sure that most people out there would have encountered the word strata and do have some form of familiarity with what a strata title is. But I'm sure, Mark, you might be able to share some things that would be previously unknown or just overlooked.
Yep. So strata title is when you're starting to share stuff. So you generally don't get a strata and a Torrens title. It's just you're either Torrens or you're strata.
Yep.
So the reason why they brought in strata is because there was buildings that were sharing stuff, and they wanted to have clear boundaries on the stuff that they share. Now, what's really interesting is in Australia, we have one of the best forms of share title, which is called strata. It was invented in 1961, so it's been around for a good 60 years now. It's trialled, it's proven, it's the most inexpensive system. It's a diplomatic system. It replaced the company title, which was where you share property. So strata title is superior and one of the best titles in the world, so much so that a lot of countries around the world have copied our strata title setup.
Oh, wow. Well, they do say that imitation is the best form of flattery. So if people are copying our strata title, it must mean that we are onto a pretty good thing.
We're on a good thing. Now, with strata title, you own two titles. So with strata title, hang on, we've got a couple of comments here from Lisa. Great topic, guys. How are you, Lise? Luke Moroney, you legend. Strata, New South Wales strata needs to get owners to opt
the sinking
fund forecast. Yep, I think I know what that means. What do you mean, Luke? Strata needs to get owners to opted
Maybe to
sinking
opt into
fund.
the sinking fund, or
Yeah. Yep. Oh, okay. So with Strata, and this is where people sort of get this mixed up a little bit. I won't stick to the day-to-day running of it and the money side of it. I'll stick to the legal side of it. You'll get two titles. One will be to the airspace of your unit, which is generally the paintwork inwards. That's your title in the Strata title.
Yep.
You'll also get a share title to the common property. So if there's 10 units in there, you will get one of 10 joint shares in the building. Now that proportion may change. For instance, if there were 10 one-bedroom units all identical, then you could say probably you may be 10%. So you'll get a share title of the common property. Now the common property is going to be from the brickwork outward. So paintwork inward is going to be your title.
Yep.
Brickwork outward is going to be a share title that you're going to own, for instance, 10% of if it's 10 identical units and your entitlement's 10%. Yep. So you will get two titles when you own Strata. And there's a comfort in that generally when you walk through that foyer of that property, you can look around and say, look, I have a joint ownership in this foyer. When you walk in the garden, you can say, I have a joint ownership in this garden. When you walk down the driveway, same thing. When you buzz the intercom, well, that's a share intercom between everyone. So it's, I guess, with Strata, you've got to understand that there's that share element to it, and then there's that's mine element to it. Now that share element to it is also governed by a Strata Title Act, and that act protects everyone in the building. Noise, costs, all that, and the way the building's being run. And generally it's very standardised across all of them.
Okay. And I suppose when you are entered into a Strata title, you do have different costs associated that you've, like Luke touched on before, there's a sinking fund, you've got the admin fund, and then there's also, is it a capital gains fund as well? So there are many different financial elements associated with keeping not only the day-to-day uptake of your Strata title, but also future works as well.
Yeah, spot on. So from that money side, where does the money come from? It comes from the residents and nobody else. Every quarter, the residents in the building are going to pay strata levies, and those strata levies are going to contribute to the day-to-day running of the property, and which is house power, which is house maintenance, electrical, gardening, which is also a sinking fund, which is saving for a rainy day fund. So that in your strata levy, you will be paying that. So that's another title that you're going to get, and it's a very, very strong title. And if you look at the way consumers are running property these days, it's very popular. People don't mind sharing the cost of running a home, whether it's strata or even share accommodation. There's an efficiency to it.
Oh, absolutely. And if you were thinking of purchasing a property or a unit within a strata complex, of course you would need to do your due diligence as a purchaser, get the strata report and read about all of the things that are happening within that building, not only now, but future works as well. So you've got the most information possible to help guide your decision in the purchase.
Which is all there. Now let's not get bedded down in strata. What other titles are there in Australia that you can own?
That I can remember off the top of my head. So there's a native title as well.
Ooh. What's that?
So it would be land that has been recognised by the Crown as belonging to the traditional custodians of the land, which would be the Aboriginal community.
It sounds like a hard to get one, a scary one.
Look, I don't know if there would be many around now. I know things like maybe Ku-ring-gai Chase, little bits of land in there would be recognised as Ku-ring-gai National Park or Aboriginal land.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. Other titles before we go, we've got company title.
Yes.
So
it's
company title is the same thing, where you're sharing property, and it's generally before people did strata, they did company.
and that would be a lot of what, more like commercial kind of buildings where you're running a shop front. Is that right, or am I wrong? Or it's held by kind of.
Yeah, it's pre 1961 when the strata stuff started coming out. They just didn't have a superior system like strata. They had an inferior system that was called company. So it was almost like a company owned the unit block.
Yep.
And you bought shares into that company, and that company could have its own rules, not a set act of rules like strata, but the company had rules back then where they had no children policy. They had rules back pre-1961 where they had you cannot rent the property out.
Wow.
So there was a lot of, depending on the strata, even racially, there was things they didn't allow in company titles. So yeah, it's
come a long way.
We come a long way. So, and it was a share. So if you ever stopped paying, banks hated lending on company title because of all these rules and regulations, that when they came to sell it, it was a really, really hard title to assume for a bank. So they couldn't take over a Torrens title, or they couldn't take over a strata title. They could easily take those titles over and sell the asset, banks, but company title was a clusterfuck. So, yeah.
Excuse the French.
Yeah. Next one.
I know that there is another one, maybe original title or original deed. It's the word's just escaping my mind at the moment, but there was another one that I did read up about.
Old system title.
That's the one. I knew it was old something. Yes.
Old system title. Now this one is like donkey age, old. And the worst thing about it is you could have sitting tenants. So tenants that had a right to the occupation of the property purely because of the duration that they'd been there.
Okay, well, that doesn't really make sense much to me. No wonder why it's very old and we're moving away from that.
Yeah, they've generally stamped most of them out in Sydney in time and retitled, and it's all been retitled, that sort of stuff. So we've done that. One more.
Lease? No?
Leasehold.
I was getting there. I was close. Leasehold, which is what we see a lot of around Bower Street, Manly, that kind of land. Am I right?
Spot on.
So what is the difference between leasehold and freehold from the man who has been in the business for the better age of part of his life?
Yeah,
so leasehold.
That's a nice way to say it.
You're welcome. So let's start with leasehold. What actually is that? What is the title? What are your rights? What is leasehold in the Australian real estate market?
Okay, so there's certain landlords that have very, very vast and big and long-term set interests. So the Catholic Church, for one, the maritime services and government facilities, for two. So there are sensitive parts of Sydney foreshore. There are that the government wishes to preserve in the interest of the people, and they don't want to give it away. They're happy to lease it for 99 years and release it even after that. But principally, they don't want to give that away forever. Yes, it can be built on, will be built on, it can be used, but in the interest of the community, they simply don't want to prostitute it off and sell it. So you will find that parts of Sydney, so down in Manly, for instance, the Manly Aquarium, it's a facility that they are happy to lease on a 40, 50-year lease, 20-year lease, but they're not happy to sell it to private enterprise. So, they'll lease it. It's called leasehold.
Leasehold. Whereas a freehold would be your Torrens title, and you can effectively buy the land and do whatever you like on it. So freehold, Torrens title, or leasehold, where you've effectively just got a lease for a predetermined amount of time.
You nailed it.
So I suppose the most common ones here around the beaches that we will see are, yes, your Torrens title, your strata title. We'll see a little bit, especially around the Manly area, of the leasehold. And if you're in an estate or some kind of townhouse area, then you could potentially have that community title as well associated to your land.
Nailed it. And one more before we go out, stratum. STRATTUM. Stratum. So people like stratum. It's another form of subdivision within strata.
Okay.
And it's another form of title. So to give you an idea, if you're a large shopping centre and you've got a bucket load of units, yes, you are sharing, but you do not have the same interests. You may even have competing interests in the residential versus the commercial. So as an example, in DY, Meriton in DY has a stratum where the 360 residents are one strata, and the 20 shops and 20 offices are a separate strata within that one strata. So it's a stratum. And the meetings are separate, the strata meetings are separate, the strata levies are separate, everything's separated. So stratum is nice.
Yeah, I would think so. I don't want to be paying the same cost as a commercial business who has more, I don't know, costs associated with the day-to-day running of their particular business, and they need more. But yes, I can see the advantages of having a stratum, especially in somewhere like the Meriton, where you've got the two different forms of business. You've got residential and commercial as well.
Nice. Has anyone got any questions out there? If you do, feel free to flick a message over during the show or after the show. I think we've covered all of them, Xanth.
Can you see my brain slowly thinking away? I'm sure we have as well. I know it is a very, very large topic. I had 85 notes of words to read over last night in association with all of these different titles. So there is a lot of information, a lot of regulations associated with each of the titles as well. But I suppose that's the advantage of having a real estate agent, where you can ask these questions and just get instant access to information. If not from me, then from Mark or anybody else here within the team.
Absolutely. And guys and girls, if you want to share this with your friends, you may be having a topic around a barbecue about strata and what is strata and what is Torrens. Share this with your friends and family. I hope it helps them.
Absolutely. Until next Tuesday, guys. See you then.
See you, legend. Thanks, Anth. Bye.